Picture an auction house, not the kind with a gavel and a man shouting numbers, a quiet one. Now fill it with 10,000 candles and the smell of hothouse gardenias in the middle of winter. Add a floor waxed until it shines like standing water, an orchestra playing Strauss behind a screen of palms, and 40 girls in white standing very straight against the walls with their hands folded, every one of them for sale, and every one of them forbidden to know it out loud. Add mothers along the edges of the room with lists in their heads. Add champagne nobody young is really allowed to drink, and lobster salad at midnight, and a man near the door whose entire profession is deciding who does not get in. That's a New York ballroom in the winter of 1894, the most beautiful room on the continent and one of the coldest markets in the world. A place of astonishing softness. Silk, fur, candlelight, the smell of violets warmed by skin, built on arithmetic as hard as a bank vault. A place where a girl could be worth everything at 10 o'clock and worth nothing at all by Lent, and never once be told which, or why, or by whom. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists craning at the Vanderbilt gold. We're going in the way you're only ever allowed to go in once, as a girl in her first season. One girl, 1 year, autumn to autumn. Everything she would have seen, smelled, counted, ached through, and survived. And everything she was never, under any circumstances, allowed to say. So I make these history stories, and honestly, I still can't tell whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just people who find it strangely soothing to hear exactly what a duke cost in railway shares in 1895. Either way, you're welcome here. Subscribe if you feel like it. One thing before we begin, and then I'll get out of the way. The ballrooms in this story are real. The streets are real, the prices are real, the dates are real, down to the famous wedding at the end, which is real down to the minute the bride was late. The girl whose eyes you're going to borrow is the only thing I've made. She's stitched together from many girls of that winter, from dance cards and dressmakers' ledgers and letters that survived in attic trunks, because the girls this story's about were trained their whole lives never to leave a record of what they actually felt. The rooms are true, the eyes are borrowed. When we touch the reals, documented people, I'll tell you exactly where the documents end. That's a promise. Get comfortable. Here we go. Breathe out, says a voice behind you, and you breathe out, and the world tightens. 2 hands haul the laces at your back, a short pull, a long pull, a knee brace somewhere below your shoulder blades for leverage, and your ribs learn, again, the exact size they're going to be this winter. You grip the fitting room post with both gloved hands the way you were taught, elbows soft, chin level, because even here, even now, with your lungs bargaining for space, a lady does not clutch. Then the smells arrive, in layers, the way they always do in this room. New silk first, a smell like warm paper and rain. Then tailor's chalk, dusty and sweet. Then the hot metallic breath of the pressing irons in the workroom next door, and benzene, sharp as a headache, where a sponge is lifting a stain out of somebody's bodice. Under all of it, gas from the wall jets, and the violet pastilles Madame keeps in a tin by the pincushions, and faintest, deepest camphor drifting up from the trunks where the winter fabrics sleep. You will smell camphor at every important moment of this year. You don't know that yet. Welcome to the top floor of Madame Renaud's establishment on West 29th Street, New York City, on a wet grey afternoon in November 1894. You are standing on a fitting stool in your corset and petticoats with your arms slightly raised, like a small statue being argued over, while 3 women decide what you're going to be. Your name is Cornelia Ashworth. Everyone who loves you, A short list, but a real one. Calls you Nell. You are 18 years old. You live at the north side of Washington Square, in a red brick house with a white marble stoop that your great-grandfather bought when the square was practically the edge of the city, and your family name is 8 generations deep in New York, and your family money is about 11 months shallow. That is the whole situation, and you are not allowed to say one word of it. The Ashworth name opens every door in this city that is worth opening. The Ashworth bank account, since the panic swallowed the railroads last year, would not reliably open a hat box, which is why this gown matters. The gown taking shape around you right now, pinned and basted white silk mousseline over a satin slip, is not a dress. Nobody in this room is pretending it is a dress. It is an investment. It is the family's last liquid capital converted into 30 yards of white and hung on your shoulders, and the return it is expected to produce sometime between now and the end of the season is a husband with money. Nobody has said this to you in words. Nobody will, all year. That is the first thing you need to understand about this world. Everything important in it is unsayable. There are 2 complete languages being spoken in every drawing room in New York this winter. The one made of words, which is about weather and music and Mrs. So-and-so's health, and the real one, made of guest lists and seating charts and who is asked to dance twice, which is about money and blood and survival. You have been fluent in the second language since you were about 11. You are required to pretend at all times that it does not exist. Add it to the list of things you know and do not say. That list is going to get much longer before spring. She has lost flesh, Madame Renaud says around a mouthful of pins. She says it to your mother, not to you. On this stool you're grammatically a piece of furniture. The waste we can take in again, that is nothing. But if she loses more, the bodice will bag, and a bagging bodice, madam, at her own debut. Madam lifts one shoulder eloquently and lets the catastrophe finish itself. She won't lose more, your mother says in the voice she uses for tradespeople, bank officers and fate. She has been nervous. It will pass. You have not been nervous. You have been hungry some evenings, because the kitchen accounts are kept short so the coal and the florist can be paid, and because your mother believes, along with every mother on the square, that a light appetite is a mark of breeding anyway. But nervous is the polite word, so nervous is the true word now. That is how truth works this year. Truth is whatever can be said in front of a dressmaker. Your mother is sitting on the little gilt chair by the pier glass with her back not touching it. Augusta Ashworth, born Augusta Ledyard, 47 years old, widowed 4, wearing black silk gone faintly green at the seams with age, although you would need to be a dressmaker or a daughter to see it. She has a profile like the head on a good coin, and she's not raised her voice since approximately 1878. In the language of words, your mother is a gentle relic of old New York. In the real language, she is the general of a one-soldier army, conducting the last campaign of a 40-year war with nothing left in the treasury but you. You watch her in the pier glass, over your own white reflection. She's looking at the gown the way a man on Wall Street looks at a stock certificate. Past its beauty, straight into what it can be exchanged for. And here is the second thing you may not say. So let it be said here, where only you can hear it. You can do that arithmetic too. You do it constantly. You're doing it right now. Your father, quiet, kind, forever smelling of cigars and the India ink he used for his accounts, taught you sums at the library table on Sunday afternoons because it amused him that you were quick, quicker than your brother, quick the way his own mother was quick. Compound interest at 7. percentages at 9, and by 12 you could carry a column of figures in your head the way other girls carried a tune. Then one evening he was gone, his heart between the soup and the fish, 4 days after your 14th birthday, and it turned out the estate was smaller than the name. And then last year, in the spring of 1893, when the railroads began to fall like scenery, and the banks folded up across the country, it turned out the estate was smaller than anyone had dared to write down. The panic of 1893 is not history to you. It is the reason there are 2 servants in a house built for 7. It is the reason your brother Gus flinches at the word reading, because the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad was where he put what was left in February of 93, at 23 years old, to make it all back to stroke, and the Reading went into receivership before the Crocuses came up and took the Ashworth recovery with it. So you count. Silently, ceaselessly, behind a face trained to perfect stillness. You know, because you have read the papers, your mother thinks you skip, and the letters she does not know you can read upside down across a desk, that the household stands on roughly $62,000 in bonds and mortgages, yielding not quite $3,100 a year. You know the house is unmortgaged, thank God and great-grandfather, but eats $1,200 a year in taxes, coal and wages. You know that a New York season, gowns, gloves, flowers, carriage hire, subscriptions, the 100 small blackmails of appearances, cannot be respectably done for less than 2,000. 3,100 coming in, 3,200 this year going out. You are the difference. Your face, your waist, your grandmother's name, waltzing across a ballroom to close a deficit. Once, at 15, you made the mistake of being visibly clever. You corrected, gently, even sweetly, a dinner guest who had bungled the interest on a 5% bond. The silence at the table lasted perhaps 4 seconds. Your mother's smile never moved. Afterward upstairs she took your hands. That frightened you. She's not a taking hands woman, and said quietly, "Never let a man hear you count. Never. They will forgive a girl anything before they forgive her that. Smile. Glide. Say nothing. That is the whole of the law. Mademoiselle will lower the arms, Madame Renaud says, and you lower your arms, and the basted sleeves settle, and for one moment the 3 women go silent at once, and in the pier glass you see what they see. A tall girl in white, dark-haired, wide-eyed, expensive, luminous, blank. A column of silk with a face at the top. Absolutely nothing visible of the ledger running behind the face, the ache under the laces, the list of unsayable things already as long as a hymn. There, Madame says softly, pins and all. There is the gown. Nobody asks you what you think of it. On the stool, in the glass, you watch yourself not being asked, and file that away too, and you would be astonished, or perhaps by now you would not, how much of this city works exactly like this fitting room. Everything measured, everything pinned, every seam of the coming winter already chalked onto you by other hands. Somewhere north of here, up 5th Avenue, in a house with a ballroom that holds 400 people and no more, a list already exists with your name either on it or not on it, and the whole shape of your life, whom you will marry, where you will be buried, what your grandchildren will be called, depends on which, and there is nothing you can do about it from this stool except stand very straight and breathe in halves. They will tell you, all winter, that you're entering society. Nobody will mention that society is entering you, that it has already been laced around your ribs and pinned at your shoulders, and that it will tighten, pull by pull, all year, until November. By November there will be a wedding, not yours, the biggest this city has ever seen. You will stand in a crowd on Fifth Avenue in the cold and watch a girl your own age, the richest girl in America, ride to church behind police lines to marry a man she is said to barely know, and you will understand every single thing about that morning that the newspapers cannot print, because you will have spent one entire year learning the language it is written in. But that's November. This is a wet afternoon at the end of autumn, and the light is failing on 29th Street, and the gas jets are singing, and Madame Renaud is easing the basted bodice off your shoulders, while her assistant, a silent girl with a tape measure around her neck like a vestment, writes figures in a long grey ledger. You catch sight of one line of that ledger as it closes, Ashworth, and a number, $340, the gown, the slip, the gloves, the underthings a debutante requires the way a ship requires rigging. More than 1/10 of everything your family will see this year, in one line of a dressmaker's book. Below it, in the neat red ink of a house that has learned to be patient with old names, balance carried forward, like everything else in your family, the name carried forward, the debts carried forward, the war carried forward into its next season, on your back in 30 yards of white. Your mother rises and settles her veil and pulls on her gloves finger by finger and says, "Come, Nell, your grandmother is expecting us." And that at least is good news, because your grandmother is the one person in New York who will tell you the truth. Old Mrs. Ashworth, Eugenia, though it has been 50 years since anyone dared, lives 4 doors down from you on the north side of the square, in a house the twin of your own, and she receives you in a back parlour that smells of wood smoke, strong tea, and the particular dry sweetness of potpourri made from roses that bloomed before the war. She's 79 years old. She wears grey silk in the morning and black silk after 4. She reads 3 newspapers a day, including the financial columns, and she says out loud, in company, the kinds of things you're only allowed to think. "Well," she says, when you've kissed her cheek, paper and violets, and sat where she points. "How much did the armour cost?" "Mother," your mother says, "it's a fair question, Augusta. When my mother fitted me out in 1833, the entire business came to $90 and a length of my aunt's lace, and I caught your father-in-law with it inside of one winter. Her eyes, which are your eyes 60 years further on, come around to you bright as a bird's. 300? 340, you say, carried forward. Nell, your mother says, 1 syllable, a whole statute book. But your grandmother laughs. It is a young laugh. It always startles you coming out of that small dry body. Carried forward, she repeats with relish. Of course it is. Renaud will carry an old name 2 full seasons before she so much as clears her throat. She carried the Van Duins for 3, and the Van Dyne girl landed a copper smelter from Cleveland, and Renaud was paid with interest and dressed the bride into the bargain. That woman extends credit more shrewdly than the chemical bank. She sets down her cup. Which is what you are this winter, child, so you had better hear it from someone who loves you. You are credit. Walking, waltzing credit, in a city that has just remembered what happens when credit fails. Mother, your mother says again, softer, and this time it is not a statute, it is almost a plea. And your grandmother looks at her daughter-in-law for a moment. 2 widows in one small warm room, 1 war between them, and 40 years of the same discipline, and lets it go. But when your mother crosses to the window to speak to the coachman about the hour, your grandmother crooks 1 finger, and you lean in, into tea and violets and old rose leaves, And she says, low and perfectly clear, everything they will tell you this winter is true, and none of it is honest. Remember that. And when it is over, come to me, and I will tell you what actually happened. Then your mother turns back from the window, and your grandmother is pouring tea, serene as a Sunday, and you are sitting straight with your hands folded, smiling at nothing, exactly as required. 2 languages. You're getting so fluent it frightens you. Before you leave, she does the thing she's done since you were small. She sends you up to the 3rd floor alone to fetch her 2nd shawl from the cedar room, and you go gladly, because the cedar room is the best room in either house. A long low chamber under the roof where 60 years of the family's silk sleeps in trunks, and the camphor is thick enough to make your eyes sting, and the light comes through one round window like light in a church. The trunk you love is the 3rd from the wall, black leather gone grey at the corners, her initials in brass gone green. Inside, wrapped in a linen sheet, folded with a care that is close to devotion, a ball gown, ivory fail and blonde lace, its skirts, cut for hoops, nobody has worn in 25 years, its tiny bodice made for a waist you could circle with your 2 hands. You've looked at it perhaps 100 times in your life. You've never once seen it worn, and she has never once said where it danced. Tonight, as you lift the shawl from the shelf above it, your grandmother's voice climbs the stairwell after you, casual as weather. Leave the trunk unlocked, Nell. We may be wanting that gown before the winter's out. You stand very still in the camper dark, your heart doing something odd, and you do not ask. Asking is not how anything is learned in this family. You leave the trunk unlocked. Home, then, through the November dark, 4 doors along the square, the gas lamps hissing alight one by one and the bare elms dripping, and the new marble arch at the foot of 5th Avenue glimmering wet and pale like something left behind by a vanished civilization. Stanford White built it. 77 feet of Tuckahoe marble where a temporary plaster arch stood for Washington's centennial, and the marble one was finished just 2 years ago, and they say there is to be a grand dedication in the spring. You have watched it rise stone by stone from your own front windows. It is that new, that raw. This whole city is like that. Powdered marble dust and fresh money over very old bones. Supper is at 7 in the back dining room because the front one costs too much to heat. Soup, a small roast stretched by its gravy, a pudding. 2 places set that matter to you more than the food. Your brother's, and the empty chair at the foot that has been empty 4 years, and is still, in every sense that counts, your father's. Gus comes in at 10 past, smelling of cold air and faintly of the sherry at somebody's club, and kisses your mother's cheek and says the room is warm and the pudding is good, and that Tom Schuyler says the market is finding its feet. Your brother is 24 and handsome in the unfinished way of a man who is going to be rich, and now must be something harder, and he cannot look at the empty chair at all. Since the reading went down, he has been looking about him, which is what this world says instead of unemployed, and what he mostly looks at is the bottom of a glass at the Calumet Club, and everyone at this table knows it, and it has never once been said aloud. You love him. That is also on the list of things too true to say. After supper, in the little upstairs sitting room, comes the real work of the evening, the work nobody outside these houses ever sees, the cards. Understand this, because the whole winter runs on it. In your world there is a second currency, printed not by the Treasury but by the engravers on Union Square, and it is the calling card. a small stiff oblong of pasteboard with a name on it, and the name is the money. Every afternoon, all over this city, carriages stop and footmen run up stoops and cards are left in silver trays in front halls, and every card means something exact. A card left in person means more than a card sent by a servant. A corner turned down means the caller came herself, in the flesh, and climbed your steps. A card from a married woman with her unmarried daughter's name printed beneath hers means my daughter exists now. Deal with us. A card not left. A silence in the silver tray where a card should have been, in the week when it should have been left. Can mean the end of a family's whole position, and not one word exchanged anywhere. Your mother banks at that tray the way your father banked downtown. Every evening she takes the day's cards up to the sitting room and reads them like a broker reading the tape. Who has called? Who has merely sent? Whose corner was turned? Who is late this year? Who is early? Who is nothing? Silence. And tonight, late in the pile, there it is. A heavy cream card, Mrs. William Backhouse Astor, and beneath the engraved name, in ink, in a secretary's perfect hand, the two words that are this currency's highest denomination, when attached to an invitation, and its cruelest counterfeit when not, for Miss Ashworth. An invitation will follow, or it will not. The card says only, you are seen. You exist on the ledger. Your mother holds it a moment longer than she has held the others. You watch her thumb move once across the engraving, the only visible tremor in the whole campaign. And then it goes into the japanned box with the rest, and she says, bed, I think, Nell. You'll want your colour. And so, at last, up 2 flights, to the small back bedroom that has been yours all your life, where Delia is waiting with the lamp lit and the bed turned down and the fire banked small. Coal is money, and the day's armour comes off piece by piece. Delia Costello, from the County Cork by way of a cousin in Brooklyn, has been in this house 11 years, since you were 7 and she was 19. She unhooks you, unlaces you, the long exhale, the ribs remembering themselves, the red seams the busk leaves along your body like the marks of a tide, and brushes out your hair in long, slow strokes, and she talks softly, 'cause she knows you sleep badly before you've heard a human voice say ordinary things. And here is what you must understand about Delia, and about every Delia in every house on this square. She knows everything. She knows the kitchen books are kept short. She knows which of your petticoats has been turned twice. She knows Master Gus's overcoat came home Tuesday smelling of a gambling room, and that the mistress cried in the linen closet on the anniversary in October with the door shut 1 minute and came out with her face perfect. The servants of this city hold its entire true history in trust, and say nothing, and that silence is the deepest bank vault in New York. A mile uptown in the grand new hotels, there are chambermaids seeing everything this city's great families can do behind doors. The girls in the houses see no less. Nothing in this house is secret from Delia, and everything is safe with her. Great doings coming, miss, she says to the mirror, brushing. The whole street's talking of nothing but the winter. I know, you say. And then, because it is 9 o'clock and the fire is small and she is the only person left awake in your world, Delia, were you ever afraid of a thing everyone kept telling you was lucky? The brush does not pause. Delia's face in the lamplight has the wide calm of a woman who has crossed an ocean alone at 19. Every blessed lucky thing that ever happened me, miss, I was afraid of first, she says, Fear's just the tax on it. Pay it and go on. Add it to the list. Pay it and go on. When she is gone, you do the last thing, the thing no one knows. From the bottom drawer of the little desk between the windows, you take your father's writing case, worn Morocco, his initials stamped small, the smell of old leather and India ink that is the smell of him, all that is left of the smell of him, and you unfold the blotter, and you write. You have done this since the winter he died. Letters to no one, unsendable letters, in your smallest hand, the ledger of the other language, the things that cannot go out of your mouth set down where no eye will ever find them. Tonight's is 4 lines. It ends. I am the whole treasury now. Everyone knows it, and no one will say it, and I would rather they said it, because a thing said out loud is smaller than a thing carried. Then the case is locked, and the drawer is shut, and the lamp is out, and you lie in the dark hearing the square, a late carriage, the wind in the bare elms, the far small bells of Grace Church down Broadway telling 11, and you think, 3 weeks from tonight, on an evening already chosen, in a white gown already pinned, you will come down a staircase into a room full of everyone who matters on this island, and the campaign will open, and nothing after it will ever be undone. The house creaks and settles around you, carrying its own weight forward, the way it has for 80 years. Sleep comes the way it comes at 18, all at once, mid-thought, like a curtain. The 3 weeks before a debut are a military drill that history has chosen to remember as a fairy tale. Every morning now begins the same way. Chocolate at 8, brought up by Delia because a debutante must keep her colour and her temper. Then an hour with your mother in the cold front parlour walking, just walking. Across the carpet, turn back, a pile of your father's books balanced on your crown. Gibbon, mostly. You have carried the decline and fall of the Roman Empire on your head so many miles this month that you feel you know it by pressure, while your mother sits with her back straight and says quietly, evenly, the catechism you will hear in your sleep for the rest of your life. Chin level, eyes soft. Never look at your feet. The floor has never once moved. Smile with the eyes before the mouth. Glide. A lady moves from the knees down, and nothing above the waist admits that motion exists. Smile. Glide. Say nothing. There it is again. It is not advice. It is the whole constitution of a nation of perhaps 400 citizens, and you are being naturalized. Then the waltz. Twice a week a dancing master comes to the house, a small precise Bavarian with pomaded whiskers who has taught half the square to turn without dizziness, and the parlour furniture is pushed to the walls, and your mother plays the same 8 bars of Strauss over and over on the untuned piano, and you turn and turn and turn, reverse turn. The gentleman's hand carries, the lady's hand rests. Lighter, mademoiselle. You're not holding the gentleman up. You practice being weightless for 2 hours at a stretch in a boned bodice, and when it ends your shoulder blades burn like you've been hauling coal, and this is the great joke at the centre of the whole performance, the joke every woman in this world is in on and no man is ever told. Serenity is the heaviest thing a body can carry. Ask any girl who has glided through a 5-hour ball smiling with the eyes before the mouth. Ask her the next morning when her feet are bathed in witch hazel, and her back is one long ache and her maid is the only living soul allowed to know. You're being trained, in other words, to produce a surface, and you are quick. You're always quick. So you learn the deeper syllabus too, the one taught between the lines. The fan has a grammar. Open fast. Annoyance. Drawn across the cheek. Something no chaperone will ever confirm. Furled and still in the lap. the only safe sentence. Eyes have a statute of limitations. To hold a man's gaze longer than a breath is a promissory note. A debutante may accept flowers, sweets, and sheet music, and absolutely nothing else. Not a glove, not a book with a marked page, not a letter. Above all, the first commandment, the one on which the entire system stands, never at any hour, in any place, for any reason, is a girl alone with a man. There will be a chaperone in every room of your life this winter. Your mother, or your grandmother, or somebody's aunt drafted like a militia. A whole standing army of black silk posted along the walls of every ballroom in New York, seeing everything, forgetting nothing. The girls call them the dragons. The dragons were all girls once. That is the part that will take you until spring to truly understand. And in the second week, a small package comes from the stationer's, and your mother opens it at the breakfast table, and there it is, your dance card. It is a beautiful, terrible little object. Leaves of ivory-coloured card no bigger than a playing card, bound with a silk cord to slip over your wrist, a tiny pencil hanging from it like a charm, and ruled lines inside, numbered, one for each dance of an evening. At every ball this winter it will hang from your left wrist, and men will ask, and their names will go on the lines, and this is the one document of the entire season that a girl herself carries, the one ledger of the whole market that lives on her own body. A full card is a rising stock. A half-empty card is a rumour that spreads before supper. Girls have wept into their pillows over a blank line the way brokers weep over a margin call. And girls have penciled fictitious names onto their own cards in cloakrooms secretly, to survive the evening. And if you think that is a small thing, then you have never been 18 in a room where everyone is counting. Your mother holds the little ivory book a moment, exactly as she held Mrs. Astor's card. It must come home full, she says. That is all. Command, prophecy, prayer. In this house there is no difference anymore. Now, before we go down the staircase, you need to understand the room we are walking into. And when I say a list, I need you to understand what a list means in the New York of 1894. This isn't a guest list the way you know guest lists. This is a border, a frontier, patrolled as seriously as any in Europe, except the territory it encloses is 400 human beings, and the customs house is one woman's front hall. The woman is Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, the Mrs. Astor, wife of William, mother of the man building hotels, empress by general surrender, everything in this city that calls itself society. And the number is real. Her ballroom, in the brownstone at 5th Avenue and 34th Street, holds 400 people, and for years her chamberlain explained the frontier in exactly those terms. There are only about 400 people in New York society, he liked to say. If you go outside the number, you strike people who are either not at ease in a ballroom or make other people not at ease. He was a stout, silver-whiskered southerner named Ward McAllister, and he had spent a quarter of a century as her master of ceremonies, her list keeper, the self-appointed customs officer of American aristocracy. He organized the subscription balls they call the patriarchs. He decided which new fortunes could be laundered into old rooms and how many seasons the laundering took. And in February of 1892 he did an astonishing thing. He gave the list, the actual list, the 400, the roll of the elect, to the New York Times, and they printed it, name by name, like a stock table of human beings. You were 15. You remember your mother reading it at this same breakfast table very quietly all the way through twice. Ashworth was on it. She never said one word. She didn't have to. The paper stayed on the hall table for a week, the way other houses display an heirloom. That is the country you're entering. Bounded by one ballroom, governed by one woman, written down once in a newspaper for all of history to check its coat against. McAllister himself, they say, is much faded now. He published a book of memoirs a few years back, Society as I Have Found It, full of his dinners and his pilotage, and society found the book vulgar, and the author suddenly tiresome, and the man who spent 25 years deciding who would be dropped has been, with exquisite courtesy, dropped. He still dines out. He is dining out somewhere in this city tonight, an old man at the foot of tables he used to command. Remember him. He has one more appointment with this story at the end of January, and it is a hard one. Add it to the list of things you know. Even the gatekeeper can fall, especially the gatekeeper. The last days go to reconnaissance. Paying calls, your mother names it, but it is reconnaissance. You and she in the hired brougham. The Ashworth carriage was sold in '93. The livery stable sends the same bay pair every time, and the whole square pretends not to know the difference. Working through the list of houses that must be visited before the invitations go out, up the only road that matters in this world, Fifth Avenue. You know this drive the way other children know rivers, up from the square, past the arch, the avenue climbing through its own history. Below 14th Street, the old houses, brick and brownstone, your grandmother's New York, going quiet now, half of them shuttered or sliding into trade. Then Madison Square, where Delmonico's holds the corner at 26th Street with its awnings and its air of knowing everyone's business, because it does, because half the marriages in this city were arranged over its lobster Newburgh. Then the long brown miles of the 30s, respectable as Sundays, where Mrs. Astor's blunt old brownstone squats at 34th Street, with its ballroom folded inside like a sword in a plain scabbard. And then, in the 50s, the astonishment. The White Chateau at 52nd Street, number 660, Alva Vanderbilt's house, though you have been taught to say Mr. William K. Vanderbilt's house, all limestone turrets and carved lace, a piece of the Loire dropped onto a Manhattan corner by Richard Morris Hunt only 11 years ago, in 1883, to force a single door, Mrs. Astor's. Everyone knows the story. It is the founding legend of the street. The Vanderbilts, railroad money, 3 generations rich and still not received, until Alva built this castle, announced a costume ball for 1,200 people, and let it be known that Mrs. Astor's daughter, who was rehearsing a quadrille for it, could not be invited because Mrs. Astor had never called. The Empress looked at the castle, weighed the arithmetic, and called. 1 pasteboard card in 1 silver tray, and a dynasty entered society, and every stone of that White House exists to commemorate the transaction. Your own mother was in that ballroom in 1883. Alva Vanderbilt fought the frontier and won, and this winter, keep this, it is the hinge of the whole year. That same Alva has a daughter of her own, just your age, named Consuelo, and ambitions for her that make one Manhattan ballroom look like a village fair. A block on, at 53rd Street stands St. Thomas Church, brownstone Gothic, its doorway framed in carving, its spire aimed at heaven from the most expensive corner of the New World. The fashionable church for fashionable weddings. You have sat through services there in visiting season, in a rented pew that cost more than Delia's year. Look at it once, as the brougham rolls past in the December light. You will be standing outside it, in a crowd of thousands before this story is done. All of it new. That is the thing. The castle 11 years old, the arch too, the hotels going up like scaffolded cliffs, the avenue itself pushing north faster than the maps can follow. Your grandmother remembers cows above 23rd Street. Your mother remembers when the Vanderbilts were not received. It is that recent, that real. This aristocracy that carries itself like Bourbon France is younger than the people running it and knows it, and that is exactly why the rules are so ferocious. Nothing guards a border like the people who crossed it last. Home, then, down the whole cold, glittering length of it, to the square, to supper, to the lamp and the lists. The invitations went out a fortnight ago, engraved. Mrs. Ashworth, at home, Thursday evening, December the 20th at 10 o'clock. Dancing. Sherry's. The new gold and white rooms up at 37th Street. Engaged for the night at a price you were not meant to see and saw. $400 before a single candle or oyster, because a house that cannot heat its front dining room may still, by the iron logic of this world, spend a year's coal on one evening. That is not madness. That is the market. You do not sell a pearl from a pushcart. Thursday, December the 20th, 1894. 3 days, then 2, then 1. And on the last night, lying awake, you hear your mother's step pause outside your door. Stop. Stand a long moment, and go on. She doesn't come in. In the morning, neither of you mentions it. 2 languages. Always. Add it to the list. Even the general is afraid. The night itself begins at 3:30 in the afternoon, in your bedroom with Delia. And it begins the way every battle begins, with equipment. Bath first, then the long armour, chemise, stockings, the corset, and tonight Delia laces you to 18 inches. The number your mother and Madame Renaud settled between them weeks ago as one settles a tariff. And 18 inches is not a number. It is a country you emigrate to for 12 hours, where breath lives in the top third of you, and everything below the ribs is rumour. Then the petticoats, then the silk underskirt, then, lifted over your head like a collapsing cloud, smelling of new silk and the lavender paper it travelled in, the gown, hooks, dozens, Delia's fingers quick and warm at your spine, long white gloves to above the elbow, worked on finger by finger with powder. Your mother's pearls, small and real, at your throat. White rosebuds, arrived at noon in a box you were not shown the bill for, wired into your hair through 40 minutes of both of them working over you in the lamplight like surgeons. And then the mirror and the strange grief nobody warns you about. The girl in the glass is perfect, and she is not entirely you, and from tonight the world will deal only with her. There now, Delia says softly over your shoulder to both of you. Sherry's at 10 o'clock on the night of December the 20th, 1894, is a cliff of light on Fifth Avenue, with a red carpet running down its steps like a tongue, and carriages stacked along the avenue for 3 blocks, breathing steam, and when I say crowded, I need you to understand what crowded means at a New York debut. This is not a modern party where guests trickle. Society moves in a herd, on a schedule, from dinner to ball to supper, and it arrives all at once. 400 people funneling through one cloakroom passage in fur and feathers, dowagers with the fronts of battleships, girls holding their skirts off the wet marble, the air a single hot broth of melting snow, hothouse roses, cigar smoke exhaled on the steps, warm fur and the peculiar burnt dust smell of the new electric lights. and the noise, the roar of 100 conversations conducted entirely in the first language, while every ear in the passage works exclusively in the second. In the ladies' cloakroom, in the crush of maids and mirrors, you hear it. 2 voices behind a rack of furs, unhurried, unkind only in the way weather is unkind. The Ashworth girl tonight. Lovely thing, apparently. The mother's managed wonderfully, considering. Considering, the second voice agrees, and the word closes like a purse. That is what they will never say to your face, and will say everywhere else, all winter. Considering. Your entire family history, the panic, the sold carriage, the cold front room folded into one genteel adverb. You stand very still between the mirrors, in your perfect gown, and you feel the word settle onto your bare shoulders with its full weight. And then, because there is a staircase waiting, and a mother at the foot of it, and no other direction on earth, you pay the tax on it, and go on. The staircase at Sherry's curves. You come down it alone. That is the whole ceremony. That is the debut. One girl in white descending into the upturned attention of 400 people, while an orchestra plays something soft and the name is announced. Miss Ashworth. Your knees you cannot feel. The banister under your glove you will remember until you die. Chin level, eyes soft, smile with the eyes first. The floor has never once moved. Somewhere below, your mother stands beside your grandmother, grey silk, diamonds out of the bank vault for one night, and your brother Gus in white tie looking suddenly, achingly like your father, and the room tilts up at you like a meadow of faces, and you glide down into the country where you will now live. What follows is 4 hours that you will spend the rest of your life being asked about, and here is the truth the asking never wants. It is work. Beautiful, glittering, punishing work. You stand in the receiving line beside your mother for the better part of an hour while the herd files past, and you're introduced 200 times, and you say how kind of you to come 200 times with 200 slightly different tilts of warmth, and your hand is pressed by dowagers who inspect you through lorgnettes at the range of 10 inches, openly, the way one inspects a horse, from teeth to withers, murmuring their verdicts to each other in the third person while holding your fingers. Charming, quite tall, the ledyard chin, do you see it? Considering. And then the dancing, and the little ivory book on your left wrist begins to fill. They come in order, the way everything here happens in order. Old family friends first, then the sons of your mother's allies, then vouched for, presented, bowing, the men you have actually been fielded for, and somewhere in the middle of it, presented by your own grandmother with a face of perfect innocence that fools you not at all, comes a young man who does not fit the order. Mr. Rhodes, your grandmother says, the great nephew of my oldest living friend, which at my age is saying a good deal, he dances Nell, which is more than can be claimed for most of the fortunes in this room. Thomas Rhodes, 23, 24. Brown-eyed, weathered a little at the cuffs if you are the kind of girl who reads cuffs, and you are. He bows over your hand exactly correctly, and then he does the thing that undoes the whole evening's architecture. He looks at the ballroom, the garlands, the candles banked like altar fires, the 400, and then at you, and says, quietly, as if handing you a stolen key, they've hung the swags a foot too low on the cornice. It ruins the proportion of the whole room. I find it helps at these affairs to know that nobody else can see it. And you laugh, really laugh. One small escaped true thing, for the first time in 3 weeks. In the second language, at close range, a girl's true laugh is an event. You see him register it like a man catching something dropped from a window. He is, you learn across the length of one waltz. He does dance beautifully with the unshowy exactness of a man who understands structures, a draftsman. In the office of Richard Morris Hunt, no less. He has held pencils, he says, on the drawings of houses this room's owners live in, including a certain white chateau at 52nd Street. Old name upstate. No money attached to it whatever. A profession instead of a fortune. Invited everywhere because ballrooms need dancing men the way ships need sailors. And marriageable by the arithmetic that governs your existence not at all. You know all of this before the waltz ends. You knew it before it began. Knowing it changes nothing about the plain fact that for 3 minutes and some seconds, turning under the candles with the swags a foot too low, you are, there is no other word for it, and you will not find one all year, comfortable. As if a clamp you had stopped noticing had been briefly unscrewed. He pencils his name on your card for one more dance late in the evening past the supper, number 14. His hand is a draftsman's hand, small precise letters, T. Rhodes. Remember that line of the card. It has more history coming than the rest of the book together. Supper is at 1, downstairs, at small round tables under palms. Bouillon, terrapin, canvas-back duck, the famous lobster Newburg that Delmonico's invented, and all New York now demands at every party regardless of whose rooms it is served in, champagne moving along the tables like weather. You are seated. Nothing at such an evening is unarranged. Beside a man your mother's age named Mr. Theodore Crane. Study him a moment, because he matters. 41 years old, a widower these 6 years, iron and railroads out of a solid Albany family, a house on Madison Avenue, no children. A large quiet man with a short beard going grey at the jaw and careful eyes, who does not shout at waiters and does not talk to the girl beside him as if she were a decorative pudding. That alone sets him apart from half the table. He asks what you think of the music. You give the trained answer, charming and empty. He listens to it, looks at you a moment, and then asks, mildly, as if it were a normal thing to ask a debutante, whether you find these evenings as long as he does. The trained answer cues up on your tongue, and instead you will never know why. Perhaps the champagne you barely touched, perhaps the word considering still lying cold on your shoulders, you say, "The music is beautiful. The hours are made of iron, Mr. Crane. I expect you know more about iron than I do." A silence, 1 heartbeat long, in which you hear your mother's entire catechism scream. Then Mr. Crane laughs, a low, genuinely startled laugh, the laugh of a man finding money in an old coat, and covers it with a napkin, and says, "Considerably less than I claim, Miss Ashworth. Most of my iron is on paper." "That's the strongest kind, you say. Paper doesn't rust." And Theodore Crane sets down his fork and looks at you, not the gown, not the pearls, you, with the expression of a buyer who came for a sensible carriage horse and has just watched it clear a 5-bar gate. You drop your eyes at once, trained, correct, heart-hammering, one thought running level under the noise of the room. Careful, and under that thought unsayable, the counting. Iron and railroads, Albany, solvent through the panic, 40,000 a year if he is $1. You did not choose to run those figures. They run themselves. They have been running since you were 11. That is the secret nobody in this room would forgive you for, and the man beside you would swear it, has just glimpsed the machine through the crack in the surface and did not recoil. Filed it, rather. The way a buyer files soundness of wind and limb. It is after supper, in the little gilt anteroom where the chaperones roost, that your mother asks, casually adjusting the rosebuds at your temple, to see your card. You hold up your wrist. She turns the ivory leaves with one gloved finger, reading the evening the way she reads the silver tray, and stops at 14. T. Rhodes. She does not frown. Nothing so loud. She takes the little pencil that hangs beside the leaves, and she turns it, and with the small India rubber tip she rubs the line, 3 strokes gentle as dusting. And T. Rhodes becomes a grey ghost of itself, and into the cleared space in her own even hand she writes, Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane asked most particularly, she says, giving you back your own wrist. You were at supper. I said you would be honoured. The 14th is a waltz. A pause, and then, in the voice that has not been raised since 1878, Mr. Rhodes dances charmingly. Men who dance charmingly are an ornament to a ballroom, Nell, and a catastrophe to a family. You will be kind to him, and you will not waste dances on him. We have 12 weeks. 12 weeks. There it is. The campaign's whole clock, said out loud for the first and last time all winter, in an anteroom between 2 women over a rubbed-out name. You dance the 14th with Mr. Crane. He waltzes the way he talks, unhurried, exact, no flourish, no stumbling. Across his shoulder once you see Thomas Rhodes by the cornice he disapproves of, watching you with no expression at all, the way a draftsman looks at a load-bearing wall that has been papered over. Then the turn carries you away. You are home at 4:30 in the morning. Delia is awake. Delia is always awake, and unhooks, unlaces, unwires the drooping rosebuds, bathes your feet which have bled a little at the heel through the silk, and says not one word about the feet, which is how you know she has seen everything there is to see tonight and always. By every law of the country you now inhabit, the evening was a triumph. The Empress's set came. The card went home full. The girl in white was pronounced. You will hear it relayed for days through the card tray in the second language. A success, considering. Before you sleep you do not open your father's writing case. You are too tired for even the unsendable truth. But you do one small thing, so small you half hide it from yourself. You slip the dance card from your wrist, and instead of leaving it on the dressing table with the dead rosebuds for Delia to clear, you open the bottom drawer, and you lay the little ivory book in beside the morocco case. And you look for a moment at line 14, the grey ghost under your mother's ink. 3 rubber strokes wide, still perfectly legible if you know what was there, and you will always know what was there. And you shut the drawer on it and lock it. A girl may keep nothing from a man, the rules say. Not a glove, not a letter, not a marked page. The rules say nothing about a ghost. The morning after a debut, a house learns exactly what it is worth, and it learns it in flowers. They begin arriving at 9. Boxes, long white boxes tied with ribbon, carried up the stoop by delivery boys with red ears, and by noon the cold front parlour, heated today, some expenses argue for themselves, looks like a florist's has been overturned into it. Roses from the sons of your mother's allies, correct and interchangeable. A vast beribboned arrangement from a Wall Street family so new that the card still smells of ambition. Lilies of the valley from your grandmother, out of season, absurd, extravagant hers, and a flat, modest box, violets deep purple, smelling like the inside of a March morning, with a card, with Mr. Crane's compliments, and his hope that the hours were, after all, not entirely iron. Your mother reads every card twice and stands the violets on the piano. And because you're your father's daughter, you cannot help it. You cost the room. American Beauty roses run to $1 and more a stem at the height of the season. The florist's windows on Broadway post the prices like a stock ticker. And there are perhaps 30 dozen stems breathing in this parlour, which means that the male portion of the 400 spent more on your approval this morning than Delia earns in 2 years. Nobody else in the house does this sum. You do it before you can stop yourself, standing in the doorway in the thick, sweet air, and you feel the familiar cold clarity settle behind your smile. The market has opened. The market approves for now. Then come the calls, day after ritual day. Your mother's at home is Thursday, and the parlour fills and empties like a tide pool. Dowagers, allies, mothers of rivals reconnoitring over teacups, the young men themselves, 7 minutes each, hat and stick held just so, chaperoned to the inch. Mr. Crane calls on the second Thursday. He stays not 7 minutes but 20, a declaration in itself plainly noted by every woman present, and talks with your mother about Albany, and with your grandmother about the winter of 1857, and to you he says only on leaving, "I am told there is skating in the park, Miss Ashworth. I hope you get your share of it." Nothing more. A large, quiet, careful man, moving at a large, quiet, careful pace, with, you can feel it, the whole room can feel it, a decision already forming somewhere in him, unhurried as a frost. It is in these weeks that you acquire the friend without whom no girl survives a season. Another girl in the same water. Bertha Lanning, birdie to everyone, including within 4 minutes you, comes out 3 weeks after you do, at a ball twice the size and 4 times the cost of yours, because the Lanning money is dry goods money, street railway money, 7 years old and enormous, and buys the biggest of everything except the one thing it is all being spent to buy, which is the past. New money must dance uphill. You know the arithmetic of her family as she knows yours. Between you, wonderfully, from the first afternoon walking the square under Delia's escort, there is no pretending otherwise. You have the name and no money, and I have the money and no name, Birdie says cheerfully, breath steaming, boots ringing on the frozen path under the bare elms. Between us, we'd be the finest catch in New York. It's too stupid, Nell. We are lots at an auction who've been taught to call it dancing. Well, I intend to be an expensive lot. I intend to cost somebody the earth. And she laughs, and the laugh has exactly one thread of wire in it, and you take her arm, and from that morning you are allies the way only 2 girls standing on the same block can be. She says out loud, "Does Birdie almost everything you have been trained to bury?" That is her luxury, paid for by the 7-year-old fortune. Almost everything. There are 5 words even Birdie Lanning never says in daylight, and by February you will have learned to hear them anyway, running under all her wire-bright chatter. The same 5 running under yours. What if no one bids? In the middle of January, the campaign meets its first supply crisis, and the war is nearly lost not in a ballroom but in a ledger. Mrs. Astor's invitation comes. It comes. Your mother holds the envelope a full 5 seconds before opening it, the nearest she will pass this winter to prayer, for her annual ball at the Brownstone, the fixed star of the whole season, the one room where the frontier and the map are the same thing. A girl cannot wear her debut gown to it. The debut gown has been seen, and this world's memory for silk is absolute. A second great gown from Renault in January, $200 if a penny. The account is already carried forward. The coal is bought, the taxes are due, and one evening you pass the study door and hear your mother and Gus inside, very low, and the words "note" and "against the house," and you stand in the cold hall with your heart going like a fist and understand that the next gown will be cut from the building you're standing in. It is your grandmother who ends it. She arrives the following morning unannounced, sits your mother down in the back parlour and says, in the voice she must have used on Captains of Industry when Madison Square was a pasture, "Augusta, you will not mortgage my son's house for silk while there is a cedar room standing 4 doors off. Send for Renault. Nell, fetch the trunk." So the ivory fay comes down from the camphor dark at last into the lamplight, and Madame Renault herself comes to the square. She would not send an assistant for this. Some commissions are war and some are art, and circles the old gown on its stand for a long time, her chin in her hand before she touches it with one finger, lightly, the way one wakes a sleeper. "Lyons silk," she says at last. "They do not make this weight now. And this lace, mademoiselle, this lace could not be bought today for love." She looks at your grandmother. "Where has it danced, madame?" "Once," your grandmother says. "During the war. It has been asleep since. I will tell the girl the story when she's earned it. Can you wake it?" Renault can wake it. For 3 weeks the gown is taken apart on your bedroom floor like a captured ship. Hoops out, seams let into the modern line, the little bodice rebuilt over your own 18 inches, the blonde lace lifted whole and reset at the shoulders in the newest fashion, which fashion, being a wheel, is nearly the oldest. And what stands on the form at the end of it is a gown of a kind no money on Fifth Avenue can order. Ivory gone the colour of candlelight, silk with 30 years of dark sleeping in its folds, lace with the dead empire's patience in every thread. It cost $40 in work. It will be the finest thing in any room it enters. And when the women of the 400 ask, and they will ask, because they can price silk through a closed carriage, the answer, arranged between your mother and grandmother in a single exchange glance without one word, is an heirloom, and Worth himself could not better it. Let them conclude what they conclude. Everything in this world is an altered gown. You're learning it seam by seam. Mrs. Astor's ball on a bitter Monday night in January 1895 is the inside of the Citadel, and the Citadel is... This is the thing you could never have guessed from outside, and it is the biggest secret in this whole story, so keep it. Small. Not the rooms. The rooms are handsome, the art is French. The famous portrait of the hostess presides over the drawing-room in oil and pearls. The supper is a poem. Small in the older, stranger way. 400 people who have known each other from cradles, checking each other against a list they all carry in their heads, in a brownstone ballroom that would fit inside Alva Vanderbilt's front hall. The Empress herself receives beneath her portrait black velvet and diamonds in such tonnage that she glitters when she breathes, a stomacher of them, a crown of them, a stout, level-eyed woman of 64 who says 4 gracious words to you, and has weighed your entire dynasty before the 3rd one is out. You curtsy, you glide, the machine takes you in, and late in the evening you do a thing debutantes are not supposed to do. You slip out of the ballroom and up the great staircase to the gallery landing where the orchestra's sound goes soft and round, and you stand at the rail in the half-dark alone for the first time in 5 hours, and you look down. Do this once, at 18, and you never fully return. From above, the ball stops being a blur of light and becomes a diagram. You can see the whole floor at once. The dancers turning in their set orbits, the black and white men and the jewel-coloured wives, the white ring of this year's girls around the edge like pearls on a strand, and along every wall the dragons in their dark silk, and you can see from up here what the dragons are doing. They are working. Eyes moving in patterns, pair by pair, girl by girl, card by card. Heads leaning together for 2 seconds precisely when a couple passes twice in an evening. The whole invisible bookkeeping of the second language laid out below you like the works of a watch with the case off. There is Mrs. Astor, stationary, the fixed axle, with the room turning around her at a speed you can almost calculate. There is your own mother, deep in the machinery, doing sums with her eyelids. There is Birdie, laughing up at a man twice her age, costing him the earth. There, small and white and straight-backed at the rim of it all, in a gown that had already outlived one war, is a girl you recognise slowly, the way you recognise your own voice heard from another room, and the cold that goes through you on that landing has nothing to do with the draft. It is a market. You've always known it was a market, but you had never once seen it, whole, from above, working. And seeing a thing whole is not the same as knowing it. It is much worse, and no one who has stood on that landing ever quite believes the first language again. You are barely a tooth on one wheel of it, but you are in it. It is turning you even now, even here, even watching. You go back down the stairs, glide, the floor has never moved, and into your orbit, and the machine closes over you, warm as bath water, smelling of gardenias and candle smoke and the hot metal of the new electric lamps. One dowager does stop you near midnight, lorgnette up, the full 10-inch inspection, a woman with the profile of a federal courthouse, and holds a fold of your skirt between 2 fingers, exactly as Renault holds silk. Worth? Surely, she says. Not to you. Past you. To the gown. An heirloom, ma'am, you say, trained and true, and letting the truth do the lying, which is the oldest trick in the whole second language. My grandmother's. The lorgnette rises 1 inch from the silk to your face, pauses, and something in the old eyes shifts 1 degree from appraisal toward, you would not have believed it an hour ago, respect. Eugenia Ashworth's lace, she says, half to herself. I sat behind that lace at the Academy of Music when Lincoln was alive, child. Tell her Cornelia Prune remembers it. And she moves on, battleship slow, into the crowd, and you stand there holding your fan in a room gone strangely quiet under its own noise. The gown was a fraud, and the fraud was inspected by the oldest eyes in the citadel, and it passed. It passed because it was never a fraud at all, only a truth with its seams moved. Your grandmother could have told them all exactly that from her chair at the edge of the room. From the look on her face when you relay it, word for word in the carriage going home, a look 30 years younger than her hands, she has always known considerably more about that lace, and that ball where it danced once in 1863, and what it means for a family to send its whole treasury down a staircase in silk, than she has ever yet said out loud. Cornelia Prune, she says at last to the window, to the passing dark of Fifth Avenue. Good God, we were girls together. And then, so quietly that you nearly miss it under the wheels, everything in this world is an altered gown, Nell. Everything and everyone in it. The whole secret is the seams. On the last day of January 1895, the man who invented the 400 dies, and the 400 does not miss a dance. You hear it the way you hear everything true in this city, from below stairs first. Delia has it from the milk cart before the papers are folded on the breakfast table. Ward McAllister, taken ill at dinner a few evenings past, dead of the grip on the 31st at 67, in the middle of the season he spent his whole life perfecting. The papers confirm it by noon, at a length that would have gratified him, with a coolness that would not. The funeral is at Grace Church, your own parish, the pale Gothic needle on Broadway, a 5-minute walk from your door, where you were christened, where the pew rents are published like a tax roll. Your grandmother announces at breakfast that she is attending, that she knew the man 40 years, that half of what is said against him was true and the other half was envy, and that a person who kept the gate that long has earned some traffic through it on his way out. You go with her. Your mother, after a silence exactly 1 second too long, comes too. Inside, the church is full. The flowers are correct. The music is handsome. But you have spent one entire winter now learning to read rooms in the second language, and you read this one from your pew, and what it says stops your breath a little. The room is full, and the map is not. You know the map now. You carry it in your head the way he carried it in his. Whole provinces of it are missing. Here and there an old ally, a stray patriarch grown loyal, Mrs. Preen, massive and immovable, 2 pews ahead with her lorgnette lowered for once. But the great constellation he arranged for a quarter of a century has, in the main, sent flowers and regrets, and gone about its February. Tonight, you happen to know, there are 3 dinners on this island going forward exactly as engraved. The season does not stop. The season never stops. The machine he built does not, it turns out, require the man who built it, and it grinds even its own engineer, courteously, without one beat of lost time. Your grandmother sits through the service with her chin level, and her eyes soft and her jaw set like masonry, and on the pavement afterward, in the raw river wind coming down 10th Street, she takes Mrs. Preen's arm. 2 old women, 2 black bonnets, 60 years of the same wars, and what passes between them needs no words at all. In the carriage she gives you the funeral's one lesson, and it is short. Mind what you just saw, Nell. He kept the list. He was never on it. Not really. Not where it matters. And he knew it. Poor vain, faithful creature. And he kept it anyway. She looks out at Broadway going by, the drays and the shop girls and the eternal indifferent city. Serve this world with your whole life, and it will send flowers. Remember that, the next time it asks you for your whole life. Add it to the list. The gate swings shut on the gatekeeper too. Then Lent comes, on the last Wednesday of February, and shuts the season like a lid. No balls. The ballrooms sleep. The 400 does penance in sables at 11 o'clock services and calls it rest. The white gowns go into camphor. The account from Madame Renaud arrives in March with the year's new work totted up. $487 now carried forward, the red ink patient as ever, and beneath the total, in the dressmaker's own hand this once, a single courteous French sentence to your mother which, translated out of both its languages at once, means, "I know exactly how this campaign stands, madame, and I am still lending on the cargo." Your mother reads it and files it, and her face announces nothing, and you do the sum you cannot help doing. The balance equals 2 months of the whole household. It sits in that ledger drawer all spring, growing quietly at no interest except the kind that keeps a girl awake. And it is in March, too, with the season shuttered and the city grey, that the newspapers hand every breakfast table in New York a scandal so exactly aimed at your own life that reading it feels like reading your fortune. Alva Vanderbilt has divorced her husband, divorced him, sued, stood up in a courtroom through her lawyers, named the woman, taken the verdict, kept the chateau and the children, and, against every law of the tribe, her position. A thing simply not done. A thing the 400 has punished with exile for lesser women 100 times. The dowagers wait, lorgnettes poised for the fall. The fall does not come. Alva, who forced the citadel once with a costume ball, is now testing whether the citadel dares drop the mother of the most marriageable girl in America. Because that is the other thing every paper prints and every parlour repeats. The daughter, Consuelo, 18 this month, your exact contemporary, heiress to the greatest of the fortunes, beautiful by every account and already being spoken of, openly in print, as if it were a railway merger, which, understand, it is, in the same sentence as an English duke. Your mother and the other mothers discuss it over the teacups in tones of ceremonial horror, and under the horror runs something you can hear now that you're fluent, something none of them will ever say. Envy is not quite the word, and neither is fear, but it lives between them. A woman took the machine into her own 2 hands. It has not yet thrown her. Every dragon in every parlour on this island is watching one question. The only question. What will it cost the girl? You will all find out together in November, outside a brownstone church you've already seen. Spring opens the square like a hand. The elms mist green. The nursemaids and the Italian organ grinders come back with the sun, and on the 4th of May, the whole neighbourhood turns out under bunting for the formal dedication of the Marble Arch. Speeches, a parade, old General Sherman's ghost practically audible, the white marble blinding under a spring sky while the band plays and the pigeons riot. Your household attends as a matter of civic property. Your grandmother refers to the arch throughout with deep satisfaction as our arch, as though Stanford White had run the drawings past her personally. And in the crowd, hat in hand, entirely unsurprising and entirely unarranged. The city is small. His great-aunt lives on the square. There is nothing for any dragon to object to in a public dedication, is Mr. Thomas Rhodes. He pays his respects to your grandmother, who receives them with the bland innocence of a woman who has engineered coincidences since before the war. And for the length of one slow circuit of the square, your mother 10 feet off in conversation, Delia 5 feet off in escort, everything correct, everything witnessed, the whole apparatus of chaperonage humming around you in the sunshine, you and he talk, about the arch at first. He shows you with 2 movements of one finger how White borrowed the proportions from Rome and then cheated them, a hair, to flatter the narrow square, and why the cheat is the genius. Anyone can copy a proportion, he says, knowing when to lie by half an inch. That's architecture. That's New York, you say, before you can stop it, and he laughs. The way you laughed at Sherry's. One escaped true thing, and then, for perhaps 30 seconds, neither of you says anything at all, and the silence is more conversational than anything either of you has said aloud all winter. I had the honour of a dance at your debut, he says at last, gravely, eyes on the arch. The 14th, I believe it was. He knows. Of course he knows. He stood by the cornice and watched Mr. Crane waltz the 14th. There are 100 trained sentences for this moment, and you know all of them, and what you say instead, quietly to the marble, is the truest thing you will say out loud all year. It was pencilled, Mr. Rhodes. Things written in pencil don't last the evening here. It's the first thing they teach us. I'm a draftsman, Miss Ashworth, he says, just as quietly. Everything I've ever built began in pencil. And then your mother turns from her conversation, unhurried, accurate as tide, and the circuit of the square is over, and he bows over your hand exactly correctly, and is gone into the crowd and the band music, and the bright, indifferent morning. That night, at the little desk between the windows, you take out your father's writing case and you do the forbidden thing at last. Not a letter to no one, a letter to someone. My dear Mr. Rhodes, it begins, and it says in your smallest hand across one page and half of another what cannot be said on any circuit of any square, that you know the arithmetic of your house better than your brother does, that you've been costed like silk and hung like silk and have consented to it, wide awake, because 8 generations do not fall to be caught by one girl's preferences, that in a city where every voice has 2 languages, his is the only one, except a grandmother's and a maid's, that has ever spoken to you in one, and that you are not writing to change a single figure in any ledger. You are writing because a thing said is smaller than a thing carried, and you needed once before the machine closes to say it. You do not sign it. You do not send it. Sending it would not merely be ruin. Sending it would be a kind of theft. His prospects are as penciled as yours, and you have no right to ink them. You read it twice, and you fold it, and you lay it in the bottom drawer beside the morocco case, and the little ivory book with its rubbed grey ghost, and you turn the small brass key on the 3 of them together. An unsent letter, an erased name, a locked drawer. If you want to know what a Gilded Age debutante was actually made of, there is the inventory. The rest was silk. In June, New York performs its annual disappearance. The awnings come down, the knockers come off the doors. The 400 entrains for Newport with its plate and its servants and its feuds packed in straw, and the avenue stands shuttered in the heat like a row of retired actors. Newport costs money. Newport is a second season with the stakes doubled, cottages that are palaces, a war of lawns, and the Ashworth treasury, as you alone in the family could state to the dollar, will not sustain 2 fronts. So the campaign does what stretch campaigns have always done. It goes to the country and calls it preference. Your grandmother's house above the Hudson, 2 hours up the river road beyond Tarrytown, is old Dutch stone under old maples, bought by Ashworths when the Republic was new. The summer you spend there is the strangest month of your year, because it is the month in which nothing happens. No cards, no dragons, no laces before noon. Your ribs return to their original dimensions. You sleep like a child and eat like a hired man and turn brown as a berry to your mother's despair. And in the middle of all that nothing, on a hilltop the whole year quietly turns over. It is an August evening. You and your grandmother have walked up the sheep path behind the house. She on your arm, slow, imperial, to the bold crown of the hill where her husband once meant to build a folly and never did, and below you, all at once, is the world. The Hudson going down, molten in the last light, wide as a strait, the Palisades standing purple on the far shore, a night boat trailing its lights south like a dropped necklace. And there, at the very rim of the sky, 30 miles down the water, a low amber smudge that does not flicker, the city. From here you can cover it with your thumb. There it is, your grandmother says, following your eyes. The whole kingdom, every ballroom, every list, every lorgnette on the island under one thumbnail. She's quiet a moment, breathing from the climb. I was going to wait for winter to tell you about the gown. I find I don't care to wait. Winters have grown unreliable at my age. And on the hilltop in the failing light she tells you plainly without ornament the story you have wondered at since you were 7. The ivory veil was made in the spring of 1864 for the great Metropolitan Fair Ball, the whole city dancing in aid of the Sanitary Commission and the wounded, with the war in its 3rd bleeding year. She was a married woman of 30 years standing by then, because at 17, Nell, she had loved a man with an old thin name and not $1 behind it, and her family had done its arithmetic and refused him, an arithmetic you may perhaps recognise, and she had smiled and glided and said nothing, and in 1834 married your grandfather Ashworth, who was solid and kind enough, and never once in all their years together made her laugh. And at that ball in 1864, the man, grey at the temples by then, a colonel of volunteers home on leave, never married, asked her husband's leave for one waltz correctly, and was given it correctly, and they danced once, in that gown, every rule observed, 2 whole lifetimes passing each other at arm's length in 3/4 time, and neither of them said one word that could not have been printed in a parish newsletter, because they were both fluent, and both knew the tune had only those measures left in it. 2 months later he fell at Cold Harbour. She folded the gown away that summer. "I have never been sorry," she says to the river, in a voice you've never heard her use. "Mind me, child, never once sorry. Sorry is for people who had a better choice and missed it. I had 2 hard choices, and I took the one that kept this family standing, and here you stand, so I was right." The night boat's light slides south. Somewhere below a dog barks at the dusk, but I could not burn that gown, and I could not wear it. For 30 years, and this winter I watched it come down a staircase on you and past Cornelia Prune's inspection, and I find... And here the voice does something small and terrible, and writes itself. I find that a thing can be right, and cost everything both, and no one tells girls that. They tell you it will stop hurting, or they tell you not to do it. Nobody tells you it will hold, and it will cost, and you will carry the cost the way you carry the posture. Well, I'm telling you. You stand a long time on the hill, her hand on your arm growing heavier, the amber smudge brightening at the world's edge as the sky goes down around it. You're barely a thread in that loom below the horizon, but you are in it. It is turning even now, in the dark, 30 miles off, turning toward November, and for the first time all year, looking at it from above, from beside this small iron woman who paid your family's whole tax once herself, you are not afraid of it. Costed, counted, pinned, but not afraid. "Now take me down," she says herself again, "before your mother sends the dog." The world's news reaches the river valley 2 days stale, and that is how at the very end of July you learn from a black-bordered column that Richard Morris Hunt is dead. The great architect, the maker of the White Chateau and the Newport Palaces, dead at Newport itself on the last day of the month, with the whole resort he built standing over him like a monument. You think, you permit yourself 1 full minute looking down the summer river, of a brown-eyed draftsman in a black armband in a shuttered office on Washington Square, and of drawings on tables that the hand that ruled them will not correct again. In September, your grandmother mentions, to the room, apropos of a letter from her oldest living friend, that young Rhodes has been offered a place with a firm out in Chicago, where they are building higher than anywhere on earth, and means to take it before the new year. You keep your eyes on your needlework. You're getting so fluent it frightens you. And all August, Birdie's letters come up from Newport like dispatches from the front. 6 pages at a canter, wire bright. The harbour, the bathing, the tennis at the casino. A Philadelphia banking gentleman named Mr. Everett Aldine, who has danced with her 4 Thursdays running and speaks to her father about railroads with his ears turning red. And then, at the end of August, the letter you will keep. All Newport has gone mad, she writes. The Duke is come, Marlborough himself quite small, quite pale, terribly grand. And last night Mrs. Vanderbilt gave him such a ball at Marble House as I shall not see again if I live to 100. They say the house cost 11 millions, Nell, and I believe it. It is all marble and gold like being inside a wedding cake, and there were favours from Tiffany's for the cotillion, and the whole town stood at the gates to watch the carriages, and Miss Vanderbilt led the dancing and wore white and looked. Bertie's pen, for one line, loses all its wire. She looked the way you looked on your staircase, Nell, exactly that straight, exactly that far away. I cannot explain what I mean, and I know you will know. You know. 3 weeks later, back in the city, with the plane trees rusting along the square and the knockers going back on the doors, the papers announce it officially, side by side with autumn shipping news, the engagement of Miss Consuelo Vanderbilt to His Grace, the 9th Duke of Marlborough, September the 20th, 1895. The wedding to follow with unheard of speed, the 6th of November at St. Thomas Church, 5th Avenue. Every column in every paper begins totting up the settlements like wedding guests counting silver, and every parlour on the island says the same 4 words behind its teacups, in the second language, with awe and pity and terror so mixed that no chemist could part them. She has done it. And in the bottom drawer of a small desk on Washington Square, under a brass key, a grey ghost and an unsent letter lie quiet, and November comes on. But October 1st, and October belongs to Bertie. Her engagement to Mr. Everett Aldine is announced the week the family returns from Newport, and the Lanning machine, which does everything at double scale, produces a wedding in 5 weeks that older families would decently take 5 months over, because new money cannot afford long engagements. A long engagement is time for older families to whisper, and the Lannings know to the dollar what whispering costs. You are asked to be a bridesmaid, and you accept with your whole heart, and so you spend October inside the working parts of the thing your entire year has been aimed at. The trousseau fittings, the silver arriving in crates like ammunition, the rehearsal of the procession, Bertie in the middle of it all, wire bright, funnier than ever, thinner than ever. 2 nights before the wedding, staying over among the trunks and tissue paper of her dismantled girlhood, you sit up late on her bed as she brushes out her hair, and Bertie talks, wonderfully, wickedly, an hour of it, everything except the one thing. And then, in the middle of a sentence about the going-away hat, she stops and looks at her own gaslit reflection as at a stranger at a party, and says, in a voice with no wire in it at all, "He's kind, Nell. I made sure of that. I'm not a fool. He's kind, and he's terribly proud of me, the way Papa is proud of the new warehouse." The brush resumes, slower. I used to think the ones like us who cried before their weddings were being weak. Now I think they were just the ones who found a private minute. There isn't a private minute in 5 weeks, you know. I've looked. Then she laughs, and the wire comes back, and she throws a glove at you and says if she must be a warehouse, she intends to be a well-insured one. And you both laugh, 19 years old on a brass bed in the gaslight, and what you do not do, either of you, because you are both fluent now, is cry. The wedding is grand and gay, and as far as any eye can measure, happy. Mr. Aldine's ears glow like lamps all through the ceremony, which you privately hold to be the best evidence on his side. And at the breakfast afterward, Bertie catches your eye once across the room, over her new husband's shoulder, and makes a face nobody else sees, the old face from the frozen path in the square. And then she is Mrs. Everett Aldine of Philadelphia, and the carriage door shuts, and the first true friend your adult life has made is a married woman being driven away down Fifth Avenue at 11 o'clock in the morning. That same week, 2 quieter transactions close on Washington Square. The first you are not meant to know, and know. On a Tuesday your grandmother goes downtown in the brougham with a small parcel in her muff, and comes back without it. And on Thursday, Madame Renault's account arrives marked, for the first time in a year, received payment in full, $512, the whole carried forward war debt of the campaign discharged. You piece it together the way you piece everything, from Delia, from the set of your mother's shoulders, from the small bare place at your grandmother's throat where, at every dinner of your entire life, a double strand of pearls has lain. Her wedding pearls, Ashworth pearls, 4 generations old, sold. She catches you looking at the bare place that Sunday and lifts her chin like a duellist. Pearls are for girls, she says, daring the table. At my age, one's neck should be decently covered or decently honest. And that is every word that is ever said in your family about the pearls forever, and it is one of the bravest speeches you will ever hear. The second transaction is yours. Mr. Crane has called all autumn, steady as a Friday, and on the last Sunday of October, walking beside you in Washington Square with your mother and grandmother 12 correct feet behind, he stops by the fountain, turns his hat once around in his hands, like a man checking a wheel before a journey, and says, "Miss Ashworth, I am 42. I talk better to engineers than at dinners, and I had settled it with myself that I was done with this part of life. You have unsettled it. I don't offer you poetry. You'd hear in a minute that I'd borrowed it. I offer you my name, my house, my respect, which is not a small word as I use it, and every year I have. Your mother permits me to ask. I am asking." The fountain goes on quietly. 12 feet back, 2 black bonnets have come to a halt with the innocence of monuments, and you look at this large, careful, unlaughing man who laughed at your iron joke at midnight last December, who has, you realize, been courting not the gown, not even quite the name, but the girl who made the iron joke, the one visible flash of the machine you are never able to keep hidden from him. And you hear yourself say, level, clear, your own voice in your own square, "Then ask me one thing more, Mr. Crane. Ask me what I think of these evenings being long." He's quiet a moment, then, "Miss Ashworth, what do you think?" "I think," you say, "that I can do the household arithmetic of any house in New York in my head, that I have done my family's since I was 14, that no one has ever asked me to, and that I am tired to death of doing it in secret. If that is a wife you can bear to live with, I will marry you." There, out loud, in open air, in daylight before witnesses, the secret. 11 months of ballrooms, and your entire dowry of hidden self, laid on the rim of a public fountain, because you've watched a year of this market now, watched Birdie sold kind, watched Consuelo priced in dukedoms, watched your grandmother's pearls go downtown in a muff, and you have concluded with the cold clarity that is the only inheritance your father could actually leave you, that if you must be bought, you will at least not be bought mislabelled. Theodore Crane looks at you for a long moment. Behind his careful eyes something moves that you will spend years learning the full shape of, and the first word for it is relief. "My books are in a state," he says at last gravely, "that my late father would have horsewhipped me for. Someone in the house ought to count, and God knows it isn't me." He puts out his hand. Not for your hand. To shake it, the way men close things downtown. And you shake it. And 12 feet away, 2 monuments resume breathing. That is how you became engaged. No knee, no poetry, 1 handshake, wet leaves, a fountain. You've heard worse bargains read out in church all your life. The settlement conference. Because there is one. There is always one. The fairy tale has a business office. And now you finally enter it. Happens on the first Monday of November in the library of the Madison Avenue house, among leather and cigar ghosts. Mr. Crane's lawyer, your family's lawyer, Gus for form's sake, your mother in black silk, and you, present by Mr. Crane's own flat insistence over both lawyers' visible pain. They talk across you for 50 minutes in that special legal weather where money pretends to be Latin, the marriage settlement, the sum to be settled on the wife, her separate estate, pin money quarterly, jointure. And you sit straight and silent, hands folded, ribs laced, listening in the language you were never supposed to own. And when your family's lawyer, reciting, puts the income of the settled fund at a figure you know in your bones to be wrong, computed simple, when the trust instrument he himself read aloud 10 minutes ago compounds it, you wait for the pause between clauses, exactly as your mother taught you to wait for the pause in music, and you say, quietly, pleasantly, in the tone reserved for remarking on weather, "Forgive me. At 4.5% compounded semi-annually, I believe that figure wants correcting by some $240 a year, in the wife's favour." The silence in that library lasts 4 seconds. You know, you count them. You've been counting seconds in hostile silences since you were 15. Your mother does not move one thread. The lawyers look at each other, and Theodore Crane, at the head of his own table, puts down his pen and, you hear it plainly, and choose, as a wife's first prerogative, never wants to mention it, laughs low into his beard. "Gentlemen," he says, "I suggest you check the lady's figure, and then I suggest we all get used to this." The figure is checked. The figure stands. Somewhere below the library, in the kitchens of Madison Avenue, the news is already travelling. The servants know everything. They always do. That the new mistress caught the lawyers out at the settlement table, and by Wednesday every butler on the avenue will have it, and every dragon by Thursday. Let it travel, you think, riding home through the November dusk past the lit shop windows. Let the ghost of the girl who was corrected at 15 ride out, just this once, and stretch her legs. One condition you set yourself that evening in the upstairs sitting room, and your mother, hearing it, only nods once and looks into the fire. Delia comes with you. Whatever else is signed in Latin, that is signed in English. You have kept nothing from Delia in 12 years, and you do not propose to begin housekeeping among strangers with your one wholly honest witness left behind on the square. And so it stands, on the evening of Tuesday, the 5th of November, 1895, engaged, settled, counted, the announcement held back at your mother's canny insistence until the middle of the month, because no engagement in America could get itself noticed this fortnight, and every column of every paper is aimed at one address. Tomorrow morning, at St. Thomas Church, 5th Avenue at 53rd Street, the greatest heiress in the Republic marries the Duke of Marlborough, and the whole city is invited to stand in the street. You're 19 now, and fluent, and you have earned one holiday from your own story. You're going to go and watch the machine perform its masterpiece. The morning of the 6th of November, 1895, comes up grey and raw. with a wind off the rivers that smells of coal smoke and cold stone, and by 9 o'clock the ceremony is set for noon. Fifth Avenue above 50th Street has stopped being a street and become a single standing creature. You go with Delia. That is the arrangement your mother sanctions. She herself would no more stand in a street crowd than dance on a table. But she does not forbid you, and the look she gives you over breakfast says plainly that she understands, in the second language, exactly why you must go. And Gus walks you both up the avenue as far as the police lines and plants himself behind you like a fence post. And when I say a crowd, I need you to understand what gathered in that street, because the papers themselves could hardly. Thousands upon thousands, and mostly women. Shop girls who've given up their mourning, matrons down from Harlem on the elevated, servants on invented errands, seamstresses, school teachers, mothers with daughters lifted on their shoulders, block upon block of the women of New York, packed from the shop fronts to the curbstones in the cold, kept off the asphalt itself by lines of police standing shoulder to shoulder, because the city has learned by now that no barrier softer than policemen will hold this particular congregation. They have been gathering since before 8. The ones at the church railings have been there since dawn. Every one of them has come to see 20 seconds of a girl none of them has ever met. You stand wedged at the curb across from the church, Delia's arm locked through yours, Gus's greatcoat buttons at your back, and the crush is a living thing. You feel strangers' breath on your neck and other women's heartbeats through your own shoulders, umbrella ribs and hat feathers and the mingled smell of wet wool, violet water, chestnuts from a cart doing gorgeous business at the corner. And the sound is like nothing you have heard in your year of rooms. Not the roar of men at a parade, but a vast, hushed, million-threaded murmur, all of it about one subject, rising and falling along the avenue like wind over a wheat field. Inside the brownstone church across the way, they say, there are flowers such as no church in America has ever carried. The florists have been at it for days. Whole groves of palms and chrysanthemums and roses gone in through these doors, and an orchestra and a choir waiting, and pew upon pew of everyone. The whole map, the entire 400, the room you saw once from a gallery landing folded into Gothic stone at the corner of 53rd Street. And out here, the rest of the country, standing on its toes in the cold. The carriages begin around 11, an hour of glossy broughams swinging in from the side streets to put down the invited under the awning, each arrival greeted by that wheatfield sound swelling and sinking. And it is in that hour, turning your head at the sensation of being looked at, that you see, not 10 feet along the curb, a familiar profile under an unfamiliar travelling hat. Thomas Rhodes, in the crowd like you, watching the church like you. Watching, you understand at one glance, as a man of buildings watches a building. That brownstone Gothic was raised before either of you was born. Men of his office have measured it, and also not that way at all. The crowd shifts. He feels the look. He turns. For a moment, across 10 feet of packed strangers, the two of you regard each other. He knows. The servants know everything. The city knows everything. The whole avenue by now knows everything. A draftsman bound for Chicago reads the engagement columns like anyone else, or hears it from a great-aunt on the square. And there in the crowd, with no chaperone on earth able to reach either of you, with every rule suspended by sheer crush of numbers, he does the whole of what there is to do, which is, he takes off his hat. Not the social inch, all the way off, and holds it a moment against his chest. To you, to the year, to the penciled 14th, to everything neither of you will ever say in any language, and inclines his head, once, gravely, like a man saluting a ship going out, and you bow your head back once, exactly as gravely, and the crowd moves like water and closes, and he has gone west out of your story, to a city building higher than anywhere on earth. You face front. Delia's arm tightens 1 degree through yours. She saw. She has seen everything for 12 years. Neither of you says one word then or ever, and that silence is her wedding gift to you and yours to him, and it is worth more than the silver coming by crate to Madison Avenue. Noon strikes. The church doors stand ready. The bridegroom is inside. The Duke arrived to almost disappointing quietness, a slight pale young man of 23 swallowed by the awning in an instant. And the bridesmaids are inside, and the mother, at whose name the Wheatfield sound went briefly complicated, is inside, and the orchestra, they will say afterward, played and played, and the bride does not come. 5 minutes. The murmur along the avenue changes pitch, tightens. 10. Policemen's horses shift and blow. Somewhere behind you a woman says, to no one, poor lamb, and is shushed, and the shushing runs out of breath halfway. 15 minutes. In your year of ballrooms you have learned exactly what this city does to a girl 5 minutes late to anything, and the whole avenue is doing the arithmetic with you now. 20 streets of strangers in wet wool, counting in the second language, which it turns out every woman in New York speaks and always has. The truth of those 20 minutes you will not learn for more than half a century, and neither will they. It comes out at last in 1952, in a book the bride herself lives to write as an old woman, called The Glitter and the Gold, and because I promised to tell you where the documents end, here is what she set down in it with her own hand, that she had loved another man, an American, and had promised herself to him in secret, that her mother had shut her up, fought her, stormed at her, sworn the marriage would happen if it killed them both, that on the morning of the 6th of November she was left alone in her room in tears, with a footman posted at the door, and, as she wrote it, spent the last hour before her wedding weeping, and the final hurried minutes on making her face fit to be seen, and that the famous 20 minutes, which the papers of 1895 dressed in a dozen gallant fictions, was simply the time it took to make a weeping girl presentable to the whole watching world. That is her testimony, published 57 years after this morning, when everyone who could have punished her for it was dead. The crowd of 1895 knows none of it, and all of it. That is the thing you will remember until your own old age. When the carriage comes at last, matched bays, the murmuring rising ahead of it up the avenue like a bow wave, her father beside her in the dimness of the cab. And when she's handed down at the awning, a tall girl in creamy satin, the long train gathered up by attendants, the veil already lowered so that not one soul in that whole vast standing multitude ever sees her face. The sound that goes up from 20 blocks of women is not a cheer. It tries to be a cheer. It comes out lower and softer and stranger. Half sigh and half blessing and half something else with no name in the first language at all. And it follows her up the steps like a tide following the moon, and the doors of St. Thomas close behind her, and the avenue stands hushed in the cold, listening to muffled organ music through stone. Delia's cheeks are wet. So, you discover with the detached mild surprise of extreme cold, are yours. That could be you. That is you, and Birdie, and every girl of this year, at the top of the market instead of the middle, the same laces, the same ledgers, the same erased pencil, the same morning tears repaired by the same trusted hands, only magnified 11 million times and set to music. The Empire's whole machinery, the lists and the cards and the settlements. The papers will shortly print that this one came to $2.5 million in railway shares, secured to the bridegroom, and the papers will for once be approximately right. All of it has been working all year toward this one image. A girl in white at the door of a church, whose face no one is permitted to see. You stand in the crowd until the bells ring out over Fifth Avenue, until the doors open and the Duchess of Marlborough comes down the steps on the arm of a stranger she's married, veil thrown back now, too far off across the sea of hats for any face to be read, which the machine, you reflect, would have arranged no differently if it could, and the carriage rolls, and the crowd begins to loosen and stream and become mere thousands of separate cold and hungry people again. Then Gus's hand on your shoulder, gentle. Home, Nellie. He's not called you Nellie since before the panic, and the three of you walk down the emptying avenue in the early dusk, past the shuttered chestnut cart, past the chateau at 52nd Street standing lit and silent with every window an eye, and no one says anything at all the whole way home to the square, because there is nothing to say that the whole city has not just stood in the street and watched. That night late, when the house has gone quiet around its banked fires and Delia has unhooked and unlaced and brushed and gone, you light the candle at the little desk between the windows and you unlock the bottom drawer. The Morocco writing case, the unsent letter, folded small, a summer old now. The ivory dance card with its silk cord and its dangling pencil, and there on the 14th line the grey ghost under your mother's ink, still perfectly legible if you know what was there. You will always know what was there. You sit for a while with the two of them in your lap, in the circle of candlelight, listening to the November wind work at the shutters, and you find you are not sad. That is the strange thing. The thing you could not have predicted a year ago at Madame Renaud's, standing pinned on a stool in your first armour. What you feel, turning the little ivory book in your fingers, is finished. The way a column of figures feels when it has been added, checked, and ruled off. A girl in white went into a church today carrying the uncounted version of everything in this drawer, magnified past bearing, and the whole city wept on her behalf without knowing why. You know why. You've spent 1 year learning why. Seam by seam, card by card, and you are done being a locked drawer. So you do the thing you've been circling all evening. You kneel at the grate where the coals are still live under their grey coats, and you feed the fire. First the letter, which catches at one corner and goes up in a soft, bright breath, taking with it the only written record that ever existed of the other language in your own hand. And then, after a moment, the dance card, leaf by ivory leaf, the silk cord last, watching the 14th line brown and curl and rise, glowing up the flue over Washington Square and out into the dark above the city, where all the unsaid things of all the seasons go. You're not burning him, nothing so large. You're burning the carrying of it. There is a difference, and your grandmother on a hilltop in August is the one who taught it to you. The cost is real, and you will pay it the way you carry your posture, but a thing carried in secret weighs double, and you are done paying double. The pencil ghost is yours now, filed where no fire reaches, in the same place you keep your father's Sunday arithmetic and the smell of India ink. Owned, not carried. The flame settles. The room is warm at your face and cold at your back, like every room in this house, like every room in this world. And it is then, you've not heard her on the stairs, you never hear her, that your mother's voice says quietly from the doorway, "That was your dance card." She's standing in the doorway in her grey wrapper with her hair down. You have not seen your mother's hair down since you were a child. It changes her face entirely. It puts the girl back into it, the way candlelight puts the dance back into old silk. She looks at the grate where the last leaf is going black, and she does not ask the question any other mother on this square would ask, because she has read every card in every tray for 30 years, and there was never any card in this house she could not read, including the ones in locked drawers, including the ones in daughters. She crosses the room instead and sits on the end of your bed, another thing she has not done in years, and looks into the fire and says, in a voice you have never heard from her, even and quiet and with all the doors in it open, "The night before I married your father, my mother sat where I am sitting now. I had been crying, carefully, you understand. I thought it was a secret. I was 18 and I thought everything I felt was a secret." A small breath, not quite a laugh. There was a young man, a naval officer, entirely unsuitable, which is a word, Nell, I have used all my life and hope never to use again after tonight. My mother sat on my bed and watched me pretend not to have been crying, and she said, "Smile, glide, say nothing. It will carry you through tomorrow, and after tomorrow it will get easier." Her mother had said it to her. I have said it to you. I have been saying it to you your whole life. She turns from the fire and looks at you, and her eyes are bright and level and terribly like her mother-in-law's, like yours. It does get easier. That is the awful thing, and the merciful thing both, and no one ever tells girls it is both. Your father was a good man, and I came to love him well. Better, maybe, for the counting kind of love than I'd have loved my lieutenant with the storybook kind, though there's no proving such things. But I will tell you what I have never told one living soul, and then we will neither of us mention it again. I can still tell you the name of his ship. 26 years, Nell. The mind keeps its own ledgers, whatever we burn. The coals tick. The wind works at the shutters. You reach across the counterpane and take your mother's hand, the third time in your life you can remember daring it, and she lets you, and the two of you sit in the small warm ruin of the year's last secret. The General and the Treasury, two fluent women with their hair down, and nothing more is said because for the first time in your life together, nothing more is needed. The war is over. You both won at the usual price. She presses your hand once hard at the door. "Mr. Crane," she says, "is a better man than I had any right to hope for, and he knows what he is getting, which is rarer, and is gone down the dark stair, and you sleep that night the whole night through, dreamless, like the dead, like the saved. The engagement is announced the 3rd week of November, decently clear of the ducal thunder, and the machine receives it with a warmth that has your mother reading cards aloud at breakfast in a voice she cannot quite keep dry. The match is pronounced. You hear it relayed through every channel, and you laugh each time. Sensible. Sound. Just what one would have hoped for the Ashworth girl. Considering. The word has changed sides entirely. It means, now, that the market watched a thin-margined house sail a flawless season, and pays it the only compliment the market knows. Mrs. Prune sends your grandmother a note in a hand like wrought iron, so the lace goes on winning. Tell the child I said so. Even the house itself seems to breathe out. The front dining room is heated again. The red ink at Renault's is a closed book. When you go for the first trousseau fittings, quiet ones, a January wedding at Grace Church, small, which suits both the widower and the Treasury, Madame herself pins you, circling the stand with her mouthful of pins exactly as she circled it 13 months ago, and at the end, chin in hand, she delivers the benediction of a woman who has dressed 3 decades of this island's campaigns. I will tell you something, mademoiselle, that I do not tell the ones on Fifth Avenue. I have carried your family 2 years on the books, and I would have carried you 2 more. Not for the name. She flicks one last pin home. Some girls the gown carries. Some girls carry the gown. Renaud can tell at the first fitting. Renaud is never wrong. And on a hard frozen morning in early December, the whole family goes to the Grand Central Depot to put Gus on the Chicago Express. The first leg of the long haul to St. Paul, where Tom Skeeler's uncle has found him a place in the traffic department of a Granger Railroad. A real place, junior and unglamorous, and $1,100 a year, obtained the way everything in your world is obtained, through the web, but held from now on the way nothing in your world is held, by work. He stands on the platform in the steam and the iron cold in a new ulster, looking young and scrubbed and scared and more like your father than ever, and he shakes Mr. Crane's hand man to man and kisses your mother, and then he holds his little sister a long moment and says, "Into your hat, quickly, where no one else can hear. You hold us all out, Nellie. Every day I'm out there I'll know whose season paid for the ticket. I mean to send it back with interest." And you say into his collar the only thing there is, "Pay it forward instead, and write to her, not just to me." She reads them twice. The whistle goes. The doors slam down the long train like dominoes, and the last you see of him that year is a gloved hand at a window, westbound, and your mother on the platform beside you, straight as a mast watching her son leave to become, at 25, at last at the far edge of the map, solvent. Winter closes over the square, gently this year. Snow comes before Christmas and lies clean on the marble arch, and the elm stands sugared, and the lamplighter goes his rounds at 4 in the blue dusk, and in the evenings you sit by the fire in the upstairs room with your mother, addressing wedding cards in your best hand while she reads the trays aloud, and the house is warm, and the ledger, you still run it nightly in your head. You always will. A mind that counts is not a tap to be shut. The ledger balances. For the first time in your remembered life, every column of it balances. A letter comes from Philadelphia in mid-December, 6 pages at a canter, and you read it twice by the fire as she knew you would. Birdie on her new house, her new cook, her new city, all wire and sparkle. And then, on the 5th page, 4 lines with no wire in them at all, set down plainly, like a woman putting a parcel into your 2 hands for safekeeping. It is not what I dreamed, Nell. It is not terrible. Both things are true, and I find one can live in the space between them quite comfortably, which is the whole secret they never told us, and I suspect it is the whole secret they never told anyone. Come in the spring and I will teach you Philadelphia, which takes 11 minutes, and then the wire again, and love, and her married name signed with a flourish half defiance and half joke, the way she wears everything. You put the letter in the Morocco case, which holds these days only things that can bear the light, and you write back the same evening, the truth, in the first language, which is a thing you can do now, because between you and Bertie Aldine the 2 languages were always one, and on the Sunday before Christmas your grandmother sends for you. Alone, says the note, in the wrought-iron hand that means business, and when you've climbed the cedar room, she is there before you, small and upright in the camphor dark under the round window, one hand resting on the 3rd trunk from the wall, the way one rests a hand on a mare that is sold. The gown goes with you to Madison Avenue, she says. No preamble. At 81 economizes on preambles. And the trunk and the lace and everything in it. No, as you begin, don't thank me. Attend to me. 30 years I kept it locked, because I thought what it held was the road not taken, and a wise woman keeps that road locked, or she wears out the hinges looking down it. Her hand moves once on the leather, a small dry sound in the still room. I was wrong, Nell. I understood it this winter, watching you. What that trunk held was not the road not taken. It was the toll I paid to take the road I took. And a paid toll is not a grief, child. It is a receipt. A family that keeps its receipts knows what its road actually cost. And a family that knows what the road cost cannot be lied to about where it is. The round window whitens with coming snow. Your mother paid. I paid. You have paid. I watched you pay the night of your own ball, and I watched you close the account this autumn at a fountain, with more sense at 19 than I ever had. So, take the trunk, put your own receipts in it, and when some winter, 50 years on a girl with your eyes stands in front of it asking where the gown danced, and here the iron voice does what it did once on a hilltop, and rights itself, and she looks at you with her chin level and her eyes soft, exactly as the catechism prescribes. Tell her everything. That is the whole inheritance, Nell. The silk is only the wrapping. You take the trunk. You'll keep it 41 years, through 2 houses, 1 century's turn, 3 children and a war, and you will do, in the end, exactly what she said. But that is far ahead, and this is the snow-lit Sunday before Christmas, 1895. And you walk home 4 doors along the white square with your hand inside your grandmother's arm, slowly, at the pace of empresses, while the bells of Grace Church ring changes down Broadway through the falling dusk. Here our year runs out, so let me tell you, before the lamps go down, what history keeps in its own trunk, because I promised you the seams, and a promise about seams is a serious thing in this story. The Duchess whose veiled face you never saw, her marriage did what marriages made of railway shares do. 11 years of state and 2 sons, a formal separation in 1906, and in 1926 an annulment. And at those proceedings, sworn and recorded, Alva herself testified to what all Fifth Avenue had murmured through its teacups in 1895, that she had forced her daughter, that the girl was coerced. The mother put it on the record to free the daughter. Say what you will of Alva, and history has she did that. Consuelo married again, a Frenchman, for love this time by every account, and lived to be 87, and in 1952 set the whole story down in the glitter and the gold in her own hand, so that the 20 minutes an avenue of women once counted in the cold could finally be read from the inside. Alva herself turned her ballroom generalship in her later years to winning women the vote, the same iron, aimed at a different gate, and died in 1933, and at her funeral the pallbearers, at her own instruction, included women. Mrs. Astor kept her throne into the new century, gave her last great ball in 1905, and died in 1908, and the brownstone with the 400 ballroom is gone as if it had never stood. The white chateau at 52nd Street came down in 1926 to make way for commerce, lace and turrets and all, having outlived the world it was built to conquer by scarcely a decade. Even St. Thomas itself, the brownstone church of the Great Wedding, burned one August night in 1905, and the church that stands on that corner today, lovely as it is another building, so that of the whole stage set of that November morning, almost nothing now remains but the avenue, the weather and the words, and the girls in white along the ballroom walls, the 400 itself, the lists, the cards, the dragons, the entire delicate, ferocious machine. It did not fall to any revolution. It simply, quietly, went the way of the gaslight. The fortunes multiplied past counting. The income tax arrived in 1913. The war came and rearranged the world's whole ledger, and the frontier one woman's front hall had patrolled dissolved like frost off a window, and within one lifetime, within your lifetime, Nell, girls were driving motor cars and cutting their hair and marrying whom they pleased, more or less, and reading with amazed pity about the winter of 1895. You do not yet know any of this, of course. You, our girl, at your fire on Washington Square in the last snow-hushed week of the year. You do not know that you have just lived through the high noon of a world already going down, that the season you survived will become a costume for other people's plays, that of all the fortunes counted in your ballrooms, the thing that will actually survive is the one commodity nobody listed, the unsaid, the unsendable, the second language, written at last into memoirs and letters and one old woman's testimony, which is how this story reached you tonight. You know none of it, and you need none of it. It is nearly midnight in December in 1895, and the house is warm, and that is enough. So let the year set you down, here, where it found you, but not as it found you. Delia has banked the fire and gone up. Her step on the attic stair is the house's last word, as it has been these 12 years and will be in the new house for 30 more. The lamp is out. The snow comes down past the window, unhurried, absolutely silent, filling up the square, softening the arch, the stoops, the iron fences, the whole stern geometry of your world, the way sleep softens an argument, and you lie in the dark of the little back bedroom for one of the last times in your life, 19 years old for a few months more, and you let the year pass once behind your eyes, slowly, like the view from a gallery landing, the pins and the chalk and the camphor, the staircase and the upturned faces, the ghost on the 14th line gone up the flue now, gone soft, the machine seen whole from above, turning, the old gown that fought its second war and won, a hilltop, a river, an amber smudge under a thumbnail, a hat held all the way off against a stranger's chest in a crowd, a veil no one saw behind, a handshake by a fountain, your mother's hair down, a trunk full of receipts. You are warm enough, you are safe enough. You are at last, and against the whole winter's arithmetic, and by your own count, which is the only audit you have ever fully trusted, enough. The corset hangs on its hook, empty, holding the shape of no one. Your ribs are your own until morning. Breathe all the way down just because you can. Again, again. Tomorrow there will be cards on the tray and lists and fittings, and the small eternal bookkeeping of being alive among people. Tomorrow there will be letters to write, one to Philadelphia, one to St. Paul, both in the first language. Tomorrow, soon enough, a January morning at Grace Church, and a quiet man who asked to hear you count. But that's tomorrow. Tomorrow always keeps until tomorrow. It is the one appointment that has never once been early. Right now there is only the snow ticking faintly at the glass, and the banked fire breathing under its grey coat, and the old house creaking its familiar creaks, carrying its weight forward, the way it has for 80 years, the way it will when everyone now sleeping in it is a name in a family Bible. The same hush as the cedar room, the same hush as the hilltop over the river, the same hush as 20 blocks of Fifth Avenue, holding its breath for a girl in white. All the year's rooms gone quiet now, one inside the other, and you in the smallest, warmest one at the centre letting go. Let it come then. Let sleep take you the way the machine never could, asking nothing, counting nothing, keeping no list. Let the laces of the day loosen, eyelet by eyelet, all the way down. Let the trays and the ledgers and the lorgnettes dissolve into the snowlight. Let your thoughts slow and soften and lose the thread, and not mind losing it. Centuries will pass. The square you know will change beyond recognition. The ballrooms will become offices, the brownstones will become numbers, the last carriage will roll away, and the language of the cards will die with its final speakers, politely, without a sound. But girls will still stand at the top of staircases gathering their courage. People will still carry unsaid things, and pay their quiet tolls, and keep their receipts, and love where they cannot say. Some things do not change. The heart's arithmetic does not change. And somewhere, always, someone will lie awake in a warm, dark room at the end of a long year, listening to snow, finally allowed to stop performing, and that someone tonight is you. So rest now, the way Nell rested that December night on Washington Square, 60 years before your grandmother was young, with the whole loud, glittering machine shut down till morning and the snow filling up the square. You've earned this rest. All year you've earned it. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.